Hey everyone, it's LS, and I'm currently live on a treadmill as, okay, this is the patch 13.06 preview, and we'll end up seeing if we are all doomed. So, apparently this is the MSI patch. I don't know if that's actually true, but a lot of chat, some stream that I had in the last week ended up saying that Freak was claiming that this is the MSI patch. Now, if that's actually the case, I think that we're probably doomed. So, let's get into it. Vayne. Passive movement speed 30 to 45, QAD ratio 60 to 80 to 75 to 115%. That is disgusting for top lane Vayne. Q buff duration 7 seconds to 3 seconds, and then W percent HP damage 4 to 12 to 6 to 10. I think these are massive changes that significantly help Vayne just in general. The fact that her W is dealing more damage up front. And now with the QAD ratio change as well, I think this is totally fine. Even though she deals a little bit less damage late, I don't think it really matters because Vayne is just going to shred through you anyway. I think that all of the early and mid-game transition buffs that this is just going to help and play a part in is way more effective. Galio, E cooldown 12 to 8 to 11 to 7. W damage reduction 20 to 40% plus 8% MR to 25 to 45% plus 12% MR. Okay. These are nice, like, anti-mage Galio buffs, but I don't necessarily think that they're going to magically push him into the meta. It doesn't really change enough about the issues that is holding him back from being, like, a meta, mainstay. Sometimes he does come in, and sometimes he is, like, an okay pick, but I still do think that Galio is one of the worst champs in the game. Talon, base mana. 377 to 400, passive damage 75 to 255, and to 80 to 280, so he's getting a lot of his damage back. And the base mana going up is okay. W mana cost 55 to 75 to 50 to 70. So not only is his base mana going up, his abilities are going down. R damage 90 to 180 to 90 to 200. So base up on R. Passive damage 110% plus crit chance to 115 per. Oh, this is Ashe. Sorry. So the Talon changes again. Pretty placebo. Again, this is the same thing as Galio. These types of changes are not magically going to make this champion suddenly become pickable. Ashe, passive damage 110% plus crit chance to 115% plus crit chance. It's an ADC Ashe buff, but it's not the kind of buff that is going to end up making it so that Ashe is suddenly going to be able to be pickable. These are all just placebo buffs pretty much across the board with the exception of Vayne. Champion nerfs. Yuumi, finally, she's getting nerfed. 7.5 to 6.25 to 6.5. Okay, 7.5 to 6.25 to just 6.5 flat. Okay. Q mana 50 to 75 to 50 to 100. Q range speed reduce. R bonus 20 to 60 resists to just removed. Okay. That is really good. That is extremely good for the Yuumi nerfs. Is it going to make it so that Yuumi doesn't get picked? No. No. This isn't going to make it so that Yuumi doesn't get picked. Now, don't get me wrong. The resists were very good. But again, the scaling on the resist, the 20 to 60, Yuumi doesn't make it to level 16 anyway, in most cases. And so level 11, yeah, you are getting some nice resists, but that's not the reason for Yuumi being picked, because Yuumi generally starts taking over the game and has more oppressive problems that are present even before that ends up happening. And now with the Q, having the 1 second off at rank 1 is probably actually good for some matchups, even though you lose a quarter second at max rank on Q. And then the mana cost going up is just something that pros are going to be able to manage. So it's just, I think it's just kind of funny. Aurelion Soul, E cooldown 12 to 10 to just a flat 12 now. Stardust required for R2, 75 to 100. This is fine because typically you end up getting Sky's Descend when your main R is on cooldown anyway, or you're just holding your main R anyway and it transforms into Sky's Descend because it's not an ability that you just, get to cast every single second that you can. Sky's Descend is a pretty conditional ultimate. And because it's conditional, I think just having another 25 stacks added to it doesn't really matter. There's even instances where you cast your first R and then you get Sky's Descend as like what would be your second R in the game. And in instances like that, this change is never going to affect it because you would just get it anyway. The cooldown on the E is, it probably is going to be noticeable on Aurelion Soul, but I don't think that it's going to be game shattering. It's probably going to be most impactful in like Baron and Elder dances or like late stage Dragon dances or something where the cooldown not being up as frequently. And then I guess in early laning, if you end up putting 2 points in E or something like that, you'll notice it very, very minor scale. R1 stun duration 1.25 to just 1. R2 knockup duration 1.25 to 1. R1 cast range 1250 to 1100, so they're making it even smaller. R2 cast range 1250 to 1100, so they're making it smaller. Okay. Vygar, base HP 575 to 550. This is going to impact him a lot in bot lane, which is where he's showing up a lot right now. Base armor 21 to 18. These are huge nerfs for bot lane Vygar, not really for mid lane Vygar. W damage 100 to 300 to 85 to 305. So they give him more damage on his W way later in the game, but they significantly hurt his early wave clear with the ability to just do WQs on the melee minions. Now, I think that the backline is still going to get set up the same exact way, but what this does is it stunts his, I believe, his early wave clear on melee minions early. Nashor's Tooth, ability haste 0 to 15, total cost 3,000 to 3,200, build path adjusted. So it seems like they're being very lazy with Nashor's Tooth. There's only 2 champions in the game that actually build Nashors, like realistically anyway. And that is Kayle and what is now likely going to be Azir. It seems like they're really trying to push Nashor's Tooth on Azir, which is very bizarre that Riot is actually making an item for a champion when we've seen how problematic that's been in the past. Immediately, I just think of like Gunblade of yesteryears. That was definitely like an item that was only intended for certain champions. You know, other types of items that were like really good on certain champions, but not really so great on others. Was like, what was that? Will of the Ancients or something, right? That was the old brown book that was built on specific champions, but then on no one else. So immediately off my head, I don't even think the gold cost should go up if they're going to add the ability haste, to be completely honest with you. It just strikes me as really odd. I think it's a buff that is probably going to be fine. The issue is that this nerfs Kayle's early laning phase because Kayle, 102 gold is a non-cannon wave. And then you have 162, 165 gold for a cannon wave. So no matter how you look at it, Kayle is now forced to stay in lane for an entire minute longer in order to get her item. So Kayle's mythic is actually delayed, or well, her legendary, which is essentially her mythic, is now delayed by an entire 1 minute, and yet there's no Kayle adjustment buffs to make up for that. And the fact that Kayle just gets 15 extra ability haste in exchange for that is a complete joke. There's no other champions that actually build Nashors first, and it strikes me really odd that Riot doesn't do some sort of compensation buff for Kayle in exchange for that. Dragon kill buffs reduced by 10 to 15%. Bloodthirster, 180 to 450, level 9 to 18, to 100 to 400, level 8 to 18. This is totally fine. The shield not being as strong as soon as you complete the item just hurts the rushes, which is typically only really coming out in some of the solo lanes, and sometimes it comes out in bot lane on like Misfortune or Aphelios. Navari Quick Blades, cooldown refund 15 to 12%. Still going to be a good item second in a lot of cases. Lethal tempo, range attack speed, 30 to 54%, max is level 12, 24 to 54%, max is level 18. This is fine. Legend Bloodline, maximum lifesteal 6 to 5.25%, max HP to 100 to 80. What? Maximum lifesteal 6 to 5.25%, max HP 100 to 85. This is fine. I mean, it's a very negligible amount of HP that's actually being lost. I feel like they're just doing this to quell the people that claim that there's too much healing in the game. And things like that. And don't get me wrong, Bloodthirster, Shield Bow, these types of combinations with overheal and stuff, it is really oppressive, and AD carries are in a fantastic spot. But the reality of the situation is that we're completely doomed if the League of Legends patch 13.6 is actually the MSI patch, because it means that the meta that we have been seeing for the last 4 months will remain the same exact meta for MSI. And I think that that is extremely depressing, because this is one of the most stale and stagnant and depressive states of League of Legends that I think that we've ever had competitively. And I say this every single year because it gets progressively worse. And the reason that it gets progressively worse is because the champion pools keep getting slimmer and slimmer for what people are obviously willing to play. There's nothing that is going to stop people from necessarily picking Lucian and Nami, Zeri and Lulu, and these types of things within these nerfs. Vayne is not going to magically appear as a bot lane AD carry. If anything, she's going to appear as a mid laner and as a top laner with these changes. So everything just strikes me as very bizarre, and obviously with the return of Yuumi, I mean, you might get some other things going on, but it is just very sad. It's very also confusing that Vygar can appear not even necessarily in competitive for more than one patch, and he immediately gets tagged. However, Lucian, Nami, Zeri, Lulu can literally destroy competitive, almost like competitive viewing experience across multiple regions for several patches, and they just don't get kneecapped. And we know that Riot is willing to kneecap champions because we've seen it with Maokai. We've seen their willingness to just remove Maokai from the meta. We've seen their willingness to just remove Yuumi from the meta. We've seen their willingness to just completely gut certain champions. We also saw it with their willingness to gut Ashe ADC or Ashe support. with the changes that they ended up doing onto her, which was very significant in hurting her. So it's very confusing why Riot doesn't take a harder stance on some of the champions that are actually causing a lot of problems. Anyways, that's it for patch 13.6 preview. I really hope that we get more changes when it actually ships, because this is just not enough. And I also hope that they actually consider about the Gnasher's Tooth stuff.